This is episode number 26 of Dev Branch. Different ways.
How you gonna WordPress? How you gonna
I'm Jason
do
Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on all the things, as they would say.
Have we updated my this is a long screen. There, hi, me. And we gotta update that so it's like my Mastodon or something. At Say Read Media.
Nope.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Moment, back at it again on the world's most influential WordPress podcast.
Speaking of those podcasts, go and follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, and you can also go hang out with us on our Discord. Say, just to let you know, like during the intro, like people listen to that too.
What do you mean?
It's not a private conversation we're having during the intro.
Did I say something?
Yeah, you were like, "Oh, we need to update this," and like, I felt like you're telling me.
Oh no, that was my intro.
It's like you want me to make things pop or something. I was like, "Oh man."
Oh no, that wasn't to you. That was just me. That was my intro. That was legitimately Say's intro. Like that was not meta talk. That was.
I am not judging you at all.
You are, but that's okay. I love you anyway.
We have a friend.
We have a friend today.
Don't worry, I can wait.
It's actually really rare that Tucker gets annoyed with me, but you know it does happen sometimes. And you know what? He's human, so it's bound to happen eventually. We know who you are, but maybe some people don't. So tell us who you are, Robert.
Yes. Oh yeah, I'm Robert. I'm a patch stack security advocate, and I'm here to talk about security stuff, static sites. I'm not sure how to WordPress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Different ways to WordPress. So early last month, I started messing around a little bit with static WordPress and generating a static copy of one of my WordPress sites just to see the process that was involved, the kind of things that could be done that didn't need to be done. I had a site that basically didn't have any sort of dynamic elements, so I was like, okay, let's see, what can be done here. Managed to install the Simply Static plugin and took my personal site, jason.cosper.me, and made a static version of it, uploaded it to the service glitch.com, and made a fully static version, less my contact form, because I later realized that there was one single dynamic thing.
Google
but nobody,
form, by the way.
Right, nobody uses a contact form, the contact form on my site. So I was like, okay, I can get rid of that. So it took another minute or two of editing some raw HTML, but it was really straightforward to get this up and published and everything else. And just kind of doing that experimentation really got me thinking about the different things that can be done. And then I logged into the post status Slack, and apparently my good friend Robert here had been messaging me for like the past 2 months, and like similar threads, was just kind of like, hey, I've been percolating a little bit on statically generated WordPress. And I was like, well, we should have him on. Like, this is absolutely a good topic to discuss. So yeah, Robert, you want to tell us a little bit about kind of, what you've been playing around with in like the static side of things?
Yeah, I set it up on my personal website, and this was all because actually I was doing Patch Stack weekly episodes, and I was kind of looking at the security implications of, should you do a static site or not, or a headless CMS site or not. And much like you in your story, like I didn't use the dynamic features on my personal website, so it was a perfect candidate for let me find out how static sites actually work so I can learn and show others. And I went with Simply Static, and it was a plugin that made it super fast and easy to set up in my infrastructure. I'm hosted at DreamHost, and it was all basically the same user, same site. And I locked down my main site, so everything's still available online, but it's secure because you have to know special passwords to access the WordPress backend. But the generator makes it one click, and it just pushes to my my live site, which is now static. And I think the result was, both more secure and like a crazy high performance score.
So
Yeah.
that actually is a great lead into I was going to ask, like, for really like image heavy sites, which what's the use case? Let me just not even paraphrase. What are the use cases for this? Obviously, performance is important, but can you either of you, all of you, elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah.
Why?
Robert,
Why static?
Robert, please.
Okay. Yeah, the use case, like the performance was like a happy side benefit, but I think that's a huge impact, right? For the biggest use case, right? Is like you have something that is interacting with a database on the back end, eating up memory on the web server, and you're getting a lot of traffic to it. I don't think there's anything that scales as good as static, if you can think of it that way. Of course, what I mentioned first was that, the site has to be a good candidate. So it must be, no dynamic content at all. If there are ways to add some dynamic content like forums and email list signups and stuff using third parties. But maybe Jason can share a little bit more on that, because I think you did that. I didn't.
Yeah. As far as that goes, well, actually, it's there's an interesting thing. I noticed that when WP Engine was, they've got their new tool that they've built for block patterns. And on the actual sign up page for the block patterns, instead of using some sort of native, either Ninja forms or Gravity forms or whatever you might use, you scroll down to the bottom of the page to sign up for the beta, and there was just an embedded Google form, like sticking in an iframe.
Okay, so not only WP Engine, but WordCamps, WordPress-based surveys, basically all of the above. And I get it for some of the WordPress stuff, not having a form because it's, the site and all that stuff. But your point is very well taken. Like, why?
Merch store.
Why is that happening?
Shop, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So having a contact form, having a place where this obviously static wouldn't work for you would be, say you have a WooCommerce store. I'm sure that there are ways to do it, but like WooCommerce, no, not really. If you had something where you were selling one or two small items, and instead of using WooCommerce, you just leaned on like a Stripe or PayPal, like sort of cart link, that it looks a little janky, but if you are trying to just sell like one or two items, maybe you don't need WooCommerce. Maybe that is just overkill for your use case. Things where you are kind of doing a more brochure forward site, where it's like, hey, you're doing a site for a restaurant, you want to show the menu, hours of operation, location or locations if you have multiple, but like you don't really need to handle ordering on the site because the restaurant owner dishes their orders out to like one of those rent-seeking places like Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever, and they're fine paying through the nose to do that. That's fine. I don't judge. Run your business how you see fit. But like, this sort of thing where you're just like, okay, well, I'm not really like changing my menu every week, month, whatever. You can throw up a site, and I mean, look at the Space Jam site. That thing has been unchanged for how many years now? 20 plus, almost 30 years at this point. Like, okay, like that doesn't need to change. Like, they don't need to generate a new version of that site. Like, if you're doing something that just needs to stay static, that doesn't need to change a lot, then I mean, why not? lean on something that will, as Robert said, give you those performance boosts, give you, you're not worrying about, especially if you're using a page builder, if you're using, Beaver Builder, Divi, Elementor. Elementor, we were kind of talking about this a little bit in the pre-show. Elementor, they recommend that you dedicate 768 megabytes of PHP memory to things. Yeah, just a tiny bit. I think was it Robert or Jason that joked, like, basically once you're done booting Windows into your session, then you can finally use Elementor. So like it actually.
I have a quick question. Can I interrupt you? When you make a static site, and then you say your site upon glitch, if you remove your dynamic site, will it stay? Does it you don't want to update anything else, you just leave it there, and then you can take your other one away and it will just be there as long as that hosting is up?
Yeah, I mean the static site. Effectively, it's almost like you can use you can use your dynamically generated site as much as you want, instead of hosting that someplace like a server where you can get access. You can run that on a tool like Local or VVV or whatever. And then using a tool like Simply Static, WP2 Static, that's another plugin that's available, generate your site, and then your WordPress site, your dynamic WordPress site, doesn't need to run at all.
It's totally decoupled.
Right.
From that. That's so interesting. You could just it kind of reminds me of the blockchain. It has this would be a better version of blockchain. If you could put a static version up, but then it could also be amended, but you'd have versions or whatever. So it's blockchain websites that are getting put up there, here's this is the site that it was, and then you could take the dynamic one and put it up again as a different thing, they would these whole different entities.
I wasn't necessarily planning on getting into this, but there is a bit of technology. I'm sure that Robert is familiar.
Was there a plan? No, just kidding.
There was a plan.
There was a plan. Okay, good. Just sure.
There is a bit of technology, and I think Robert might be familiar with it, called IPFS. IPFS is effectively a way to publish things like these static sites and share the sites across multiple nodes, basically a fully distributed, you're not hosting your site in one individual place. And there is some kind of, I hate using the word blockchain.
I know. But
right.
I didn't mean to say block, but I was it's blockchain has a concept. So it doesn't have to be hype. It can also just, be a technology.
Right. So, but it's really an interesting sort of way of distributing statically generated files. So if you wanted to basically put your files on something like IPFS, which I think the Brave browser by default has support for IPFS and being able to browse IPFS sites effectively. It's just really all very interesting to me that you can kind of use these technologies, and WordPress basically just isn't getting left in the dust.
It becomes a content engine, like a CMS, like it kind of was, or instead of its more expanded version of being the entire platform, right? Being all parts, it really strips it down to that content management component where you're really, I used to call it when I was doing talks, I would call it an FDI. I've used that term on here before, but does anyone remember now? Fancy data inputter.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
That's my favorite
just-
term. So it brings it back to the FDI roots of WordPress.
So we're just taking WordPress, sticking it in the CGI bin, and then running a command real quick, and then like the movable type version of WordPress just spits out something. Is kind of what's happening here.
This is
fascinating.
absolutely a throwback to movable type, to pushing a button on Blogger
right now.
Yeah, pushing a button on Blogger and having it generate your site and upload it to your home directory. That sort of thing.
Woo! I hadn't thought about that in a long time.
Right.
Blogger. Oh,
I mean, that's where Say's form mail was running before we got her to start using form stuff.
Oh yeah,
right?
Not on Blogger.
Yeah,
No,
that's awesome.
I think so can you talk about, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to talk about more things, but like what are the other, like, other than what are the other things other than performance? So can you talk a little bit more about like the security aspect of it? Because like that I think is kind of even more, like, performance is one thing, but you can, do all sorts of things, make performance speed up, but security is
it's gonna be quick. Yeah, because it's HTML. There's nothing to attack.
There's nothing to hack.
There's no input. Remember the whole dynamic, like if it's dynamic website, it's not a good candidate. That step also means that you don't take in any user input. Therefore, no input is processed by the web application. Turns into that. Well, that's how attack vectors happen. Right. The web application itself. Now, there's still a stack there, right? Technically, they could attack Apache or Nginx that's running it, but they're not going to be able to attack PHP because PHP is not used, right? So that really reduces the attack, which then in turn increases the longevity of the website, right? There's no maintenance needed. How many of us have a website that we might not have run maintenance on regularly enough, right? So when you're not accepting these inputs,
couple of those.
Maybe static is a good way to think. I like the example of Space Jam. It's still there, right? These old websites, it creates a way that, well, it was safe and static because it's just doing communication in one way. It's not trying
I guess the only problem that it might have is if like the browser doesn't support something that was in there. But are the browsers even doing that anymore? Because like it would be putting out like modern HTML, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not
it would be modern HTML. You could do a DOM specific JavaScript, like a reflected JavaScript that exists in the DOM, which would be all in JavaScript, which would be on the front end. So it's not impervious. But the good thing about these DOM or reflected cross-site scripting attacks, if you know the details, is they're only temporary, right? They're ephemeral, right? They're with that one request. So the browser that gets the injected payload is, the only thing. Basically, they're attacking themselves. It's not the same as a stored cross-site scripting, which would attack, which would execute the JavaScript on every subsequent request, unless somehow you got the stored JavaScripting somewhere under your static HTML. But let's not get that deep.
So you say like maybe the browser ends up not supporting something anymore. I will say this as far as backwards compatibility goes, and I dropped this in our private chat. The marquee tag is still available. So I really wouldn't.
I mean, they're not really dropping anything at this point.
Right. They're just adding. They're not really taking away.
Well, I'm going to counter you with reminding you of the late blink tag.
Oh, blink.
So if someone wanted to do this today, let's just say they're on shared hosting, because at this point we're going shared hosting, right? The cheapest thing set up here. You're on shared hosting. Do you just create like a subdomain that's going to be your dynamic site? You go and put all your stuff in there, and then you have it deploy it via FTP using like simple static or whatever to the actual domain, and then you're good. Like that would be it.
That's pretty much.
I mean, the whole like using Netify
like
or
insanely
using
simple, non-complicated.
Yeah, like the whole Netify glitch, whatever. Like all of these like other things. Like it's cool that those exist. Somebody was saying in the chat that they use like Cloudflare pages. You could use a CDN like Amazon or whatever. But like if you just wanted to go bare bones, set this up, a subdomain, throw your dynamic site in there, even put an Apache password in front of it, just so like you really can't touch it, and then just deploy it via FTP, and then you're good to go, right?
Yep. Pretty much. With my setup, I don't even have to use FTP. Yeah, because it just outputs to the same users directories. It just outputs like.
Oh, okay. So you could
Both
even
sites
put
are-
it in a directory. You could put WordPress in a direct. Oh, yeah, that might.
Yeah, the outputted HTML into the directory. It gets a
Yeah.
little bit weird there, but that's one option, right? You can totally download the zip. I think that's what Cosper you're doing. You're downloading it, probably injecting it into another script that uploads it to what service you're using.
To glitch. So I just take output the zip, and then only because the site was already hosted and I was just doing an experiment, but it outputted the zip. I took the zip and then dropped it into a GitHub repo, and then
I took the zip and dropped it to the Git. Sorry.
Yeah, but just
WP wraps.
Right.
slotted it right in to GitHub, and then Glitch went ahead and picked up the update to the GitHub repo. So I could actually automate this a little bit more. There is an interesting, I kind of like half mentioned it, but the other plugin out there for doing static stuff outside of Simply Static, which is a great plugin, is WP Static, which is, I think, was eventually acquired by Static / Element or etc. But it has a really powerful set of add-ons and ways to kind of hack some additional things in. But effectively, one of the add-ons that it has, or a few of the add-ons that they have, Google Cloud Storage deployment, Cloudflare Worker static site hosting. So the cool thing about this is if you're doing static stuff, and if you're watching Dev Branch, I'm sure that you're familiar with WP CLI. And effectively, like Tucker, if you click into like Cloudflare Worker, if you scroll back up and go, Cloudflare Worker static site hosting, you can, just from WP CLI, kick off a job that will post your static site just up to Cloudflare Workers. You just have to make sure that you have put the appropriate like API keys in place and everything else. And the cool thing about Cloudflare Workers, and also about like Netlify and a few of those other providers, you can deploy a static site like this to multiple points of provision. So you can serve up these static sites closest to wherever anybody is trying to view them. So you can sort of spread your WordPress, your statically generated WordPress site around the globe, and people are getting, because it's on a close by point of provision, they can get your site very quickly, like even more quickly than, I just deployed to my DreamHost server in Portland and someone in Australia is looking at the site. It's like, no. Like, we can actually serve this up from a point of provision in Australia, and they can see the site just as quickly. They don't have that additional network latency there.
Looking in the chat here,
I was actually going to talk about that. I was going to talk about the chat because Oliver had this question. Not about that one, but another question that Oliver was talking about was something I was going to say. This one. We have been talking about headless and static less so, but for a while. And I guess that's why I was trying to get on with like, what's the use case? Like, why aren't more people doing this? I can answer that for like my level of client, but it seems to me that especially at the enterprise level or just bigger businesses in general, where there's, more stuff to hack, more the website is, more substantial. Like, why isn't this more common? I feel like this is very low profile.
Yeah.
Like
no ideas.
Kind of
No thoughts, no theories. We don't know.
Let's just walk through like, how is WordPress presented to users? It's presented as a full-fledged product, right? They don't know they've got to do this extra step, right?
We have to do so many extra steps. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's not like
maybe the client for static isn't so much the site owner itself, although in the end it will be, but maybe it's the agencies could look at static as a way to improve their offerings, right?
Yeah.
Now, we haven't talked prices on some of these things, but like the static hosting prices are really similar to shared hosting prices, but a little bit more, right? But you notice one big difference when I've looked at some of the plans is they're unlimited websites, because they know the performance and the scalability, right, is there. So you're paying maybe $10 a month, and you're like, oh, this is a little more than my shared hosting, which already works with WordPress with a database and, you know, hosts like DreamHost and GoDaddy and Bluehost that have been around forever. Like, they've got their stack to make that work. But going static is like a little different stack, and it's kind of the new thing. Maybe you need to try it out. And maybe if you're an agency that has a lot of clients that could kind of move to static, like they don't use the dynamic stuff, they're probably cheaper paying customers, right? Or lower prices, but you'll be able to get one account for, you know, $10 or so, and you'll be able to put all of them there, and you'll be able to do all the maintenance and stuff. And maybe their backends will still work. If you set it up the right way, their backends will still work just like they know. They just have to click publish for the whole site to get published.
So an interesting dovetail to this, and something that I wanted to bring up before we ran out of time, especially since it's in the episode description, is the things that are being done with SQlite, specifically around. Yeah, specific, and actually, we were discussing it before Say showed up, and we had to stop talking about the show before the show. As is her rule.
Rule, people.
It is a good rule. But so we were talking about this, and SQlite, and a very interesting thing about it is that completely gets rid of the need, especially in these like shared server environments, to have to run anything other than PHP. MySQL becomes like, and the overhead that runs on the server, a lot of services run that just to keep the overhead low, run MySQL on like a separate instance, and try to keep that away. But I have seen some shared services run MySQL and Apache or Nginx or whatever, like all just right there. Getting MySQL like effectively out of the stack, where you are just running PHP. You are like that is all you need to host your site. It becomes really easy to set up. I mean, it already is pretty easy to set up to set up WordPress on like a Raspberry Pi type server, some little single board computer, like, sitting over at the side of your desk. I mean, hell, I've got a Raspberry Pi right here that very quickly, like I only need to run PHP to do the generation for my site. SQlite is running. There's no additional overhead there. It tends to be, at least currently, a little bit slower than MySQL, but they're working on improving performance there. But it's just really interesting that the amount of resources to serve the site in statically generating it also will end up going down if you are just running the SQlite version of WordPress as well, and kind of making that push. And right now, the big push for SQlite is to kind of help with the sort of like theme and plugin preview in the WordPress repository, which is will let you basically run an entire WordPress install inside your browser. That was the thing that they demoed just a few months ago, and is still like just so mind-blowing to me that this is a thing that we might be able to do. But I mean, just imagine a copy of WordPress that lives nowhere except for your browser. You push a button, you get a statically generated site that then you can, either through API integrations or whatever, click a button and upload it to Cloudflare workers, upload it to your DreamHost account, upload it to whatever.
That's a great idea. I'm going to make a slight joke about it. Did we just like turn WordPress into Dreamweaver?
Oh my god,
Yeah.
that's what I said when I was laughing. When I was on mute. That's what I came off
Just-
mute to say. I was
just make
like,
sure
wait,
you-
so it's Dreamweaver?
The vibe
I
was
think
there.
so, I need like the 90s are really in. Just like they are
Yeah.
in.
Retro.
They are in like all over the place because I've felt for a while like we are definitely like in the 90s with all the federated stuff and everything, and now this just sounds like, what are we doing? Are we all millennials just recreating our youth? That's what I
Yeah.
think. We're creating the technology we couldn't have then. Now we're like, we
just
want
have
it.
to
We had ideas.
But you have to get a better Raspberry Pi to be able to make Elementor work on it. But other than that, it'll be okay.
Sure.
We're gonna slice some images. That's the funniest thing since sliced images. Oh my god.
Oh man. Well, time is up. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out
So
with us,
much to-
Robert.
so
It's always
much
a
to
pleasure
learn.
having you come hang out with us. You do know that
Patch
there is
Stack.
another show called WP Water Cooler that we do all the other times of the month.
Hashtag-
Maybe at some point we'll get you to not talk about like hard, deep technology stuff and just talk about like, I don't know, like Beaver, like, like
I have to
like,
really
yeah,
I'll just talk about
stuff.
life and everything that comes.
I
with
have to
it.
really pay attention when you're talking, Robert. It's like because it's like I have to like engage like my dev brain, and I'm not as literate in that land as I am in some of the other lands, and I'm just like, right, yes, totally, okay. So
Yeah, that's what I think you said before. The beginner's mind, right?
yeah, exactly. The beginner's mind. I come with it all the time.
All right,
Oh,
folks.
thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Here's
you.
our outro.
Bye.
Hey. Hey, at some point we probably will end up having a static website. Just make sure all those things work. So feel free to go take a look at our site over there as well. We'd appreciate it. Talk to y'all later. You have a good one. Bye-bye.
Oh.